Good morning, everyone. Welcome to God's Grace on Thee and Angel Wallace Productions. Today is. What is today? I'm always lost, really. Today's Tuesday, the 3rd of December of 2024. And it is now 30 degrees. It feels like 38. We will have a high of 50 and a low of 23. So, today I wanted to read to you chapter 2 of the Phoenix Journals. And we're into the rise of the Antichrist in volume 4. I jumped to that because time is getting closer, and whether it be 4 days, 4 months, or 4 years, it's still a short period of time to prepare for the inevitable. Now in chapter 2, let's begin. Recording number 2, Hatton, Saturday, February the 28th of 1998, 10:26 a.m., year 11, day 196, Jews and Gentiles. I must keep mentioning these two things over and over, for if you are a recent reader, you may miss the punchline. There are a lot of new readers among Arabs, Islamic, and other religions outside any white populations, but they too are Gentiles. No matter what your color, your creed, your nationality, your race, your origin, you are Gentile if you are not Jew, period. No slack is cut for any of you, but a Jew can be from any of these categories above. How nice to set your own rules and definitions for a world you plan to rule and enslave. Quoting Part 15, Global Parasites. The Jewish plan to split society by ideas. Now, the method by which the protocols work for the breakdown of society should now be fairly evident to readers of these articles. An understanding of the method is necessary if one is to find the meaning of the currents and cross-currents which make so hopeless a hodgepodge of the present times. Now, people who are confused and discouraged by the various voices and discordant theories of today, each seeming to be plausible and promising, may find a clear clue to the value of the voices and the meaning of the theories if they understand that their confusion and discouragement comprise the very objective which is sought. The uncertainty, hesitation, hopelessness, fear, the eagerness with which every promising plan and offered solution is grasped. These are the very reactions which the program outlined in the protocol aims to produce. The condition is proof of the efficacy of the program. It is a method that takes time, and the protocols declare that it has taken time indeed, centuries. Students of the matter find the identical program of the protocols announced and operated by the Jewish race from the first of the century onward. It has taken 1900 years to bring Europe to its present degree of subjugation, violent subjugation in some countries, political subjugation in some, economic subjugation in all. But in America, the same program with almost the same degree of success has required about 50 years. certain mistaken ideas of liberalism, certain flabby ideas of tolerance, all of them originating at European sources, which the protocolists had completely polluted. We're transported to America, and here, under cover of the blindness and innocence of a false liberalism and tolerance, together with modern appliances for the swift acceleration of opinion, there has been worked a subjugation of our institutions and public thought, which is the amazement of European observers. It is a fact that some of the important students of the Jewish question, whom Jewish publicists are pleased to damn with the term anti-Semites, have been awakened to the existence of the question, not by what they observed in Europe, but by what they have seen in the swift and distant close-up which has been afforded in American affairs. The center of Jewish power, the principal sponsors of the Jewish program, are resident in America, and the leverage which was used at the peace conference to fasten Jewish power more securely upon Europe was American leverage exercised at the behest of the strong Jewish pressure which was brought from the United States for that purpose. And these activities did not end with the peace conference. The whole method of the protocols may be described in one word: disintegration. The undoing of what has been done, the creation of a long and hopeless interim in which attempts at reconstruction shall be baffled, and the gradual wearing down of public opinion and public confidence, till those who stand outside the created chaos shall insert their strong, calm hand to seize control. That is the whole method of procedure. Putting together the estimate of human nature which obtains in these protocols and their claims to a rather definite, though as yet incomplete, fulfillment of the world program. These two compromise the themes of the previous two articles. Some of the aspects of this propaganda of disintegration have become clear, but not all of them. There are yet other aspects of these methods which will be dealt in the present articles, and there are yet future reaches of the program which will be considered later. The first point of attack is collective opinion, that body of ideas which through men's agreement with them holds large groups together in political, racial, religious, or social unity. Sometimes we call them standards. Sometimes we call them ideals. And whatever they may be called, they are the invisible bonds of unity. They are the great overarching reason for group unity and loyalty. The protocols assert that here the first attack has been made. The history of Jewish propaganda in the world shows that also. Now, the first wave of attack is to corrupt collective opinion. Now, to corrupt, in the real sense, does not mean anything unsavory or unclean. The whole power of every heresy is its attractiveness to the good mind. The whole explanation of the stronghold which untruth has gained upon the world of our day is that the untruth is reasonable, inspiring, and apparently good. It is only after a long discipline in false ideals, which are reasonable, inspiring, and good, that the evil fruits appear in acts and conditions which are unreasonable, destructive, and wholly evil. And if you will trace the idea of liberty as it has appeared in Russian history from its philosophic beginning, a Jewish beginning, by the way, to its present ending, a Jewish ending also, you will see the process. The protocols claim that the Gentiles are not thinkers, that attractive ideas have been thrown at them so strategically and persistently that the power of thought is almost destroyed out of them. Fortunately, this is a matter on which any Gentile may apply his own test. If he will segregate his ruling ideas, especially those that center around the thought of democracy, he will discover that he has been ruled in his mind by a whole company of ideas into whose authority over him he has not acquired at all. He is ruled by say-so, whose origin he has not traced. And when pursuing those ideas, he finds that they are not practicable. He is received by the explanation that we are not yet sufficiently advanced. Yet, when he does see men who are sufficiently advanced to put these very ideas into operation, he recoils from what he sees them do, because he knows that advancement, such as that is deterioration, a form of disintegration. Yet every one of the ideas were good, reasonable, inspiring, humane to begin with. And if this Gentile will observe a little further, he will see that they are the most persistently preached ideas in the world. He will also see who the preachers are. The protocols distinctly declare that it is by means of the set of ideas which cluster around democracy that their first victory over public opinion was obtained. The idea is the weapon. In the kill box Hatton. Now, speaking of weapons of mass destruction, here you really get it going. Let's continue. And to be a weapon, it must be an idea at variance with the natural trend of life. It must indeed be a theory opposed to the facts of life. And no theory so opposed can be expected to take root and become the ruling factor unless it appeals to the mind as reasonable, inspiring, and good. The truth frequently seems unreasonable, and the truth frequently is depressing. The truth sometimes seems to be evil, but it has this eternal advantage. It is the truth. And what is built thereon neither brings nor yields to confusion. The first step does not give the control of public opinion, but leads up to it. It is worthy of note that it is this sowing of the poison of liberalism, as the protocols name it, which comes first in order in those documents. Then following upon that, the protocols say, to obtain control over public opinion, it is first necessary to confuse it. Truth this one, and cannot be confused, but this false appealing liberalism, which has been sown broadcast and which is ripening faster under Jewish nurture in America than it ever did in Europe, is easily confused because it is not truth. It is error, and error has 1,000 forms. Take a nation, a party, a city, an association in which the poison of liberalism has been sown. And you can split that up into as many factions as there are individuals, simply by throwing among them certain modifications of the original idea. This is a piece of strategy well known to the Arch-Jew, a man whose vision was wider than any statesman and whose program paralleled the protocols, knew this many years ago when he said that the Zionist cryptic for Jewish state would come before the socialist state could come. He knew with what endless divisions the liberalism which he and his predecessors had planted would be shackled and crippled, the process of which all Gentiles have been the victims, but never the Jews, is just this. First, to create an ideal of broad-mindedness, that is the phrase which appears in every Jewish remonstrance against public mention of the Jew and his alleged world program. We thought you were too broad-minded a man to express such thoughts. We thought Mr. So-and-so was too broad-minded a man to suspect the Jews of this. We thought the daily or weekly or monthly such and such a paper was too broad-minded editorially to consider such material. It is a sort of keyword, indicative of the state of mind in which it is desired that the Gentiles be kept. It is a state of flabby tolerance, a state of mind which mouths meaningless phrases about liberty, phrases which act as an opiate on the mind and conscience, and which allow all sorts of things to be done under cover. The phrase, the slogan, is a very dependable Jewish weapon. In all times, people have accepted words for acts, Protocol 5. The reality behind the phrase, the protocols, frankly, admit to be non-existent. Hatton in the kill box. Let us pause long enough here to also consider the ideas of holidays. You will note, if you have any historical study at all, that Christmas comes at a Jewish time of celebration. Easter is set to coincide with Jewish Passover. In Europe, in the Orthodox sects, you will find both Christmas and Easter being at least a week or so after the American British Jewish celebrations. Can anyone tell time, or has your time perhaps been altered to suit the needs of the takers, like by at least 8 to 11 years? What is of this tradition of Lent and the celebrations going into this supposedly sacred time of the year? Last night closed the famous pre-Lent celebration called Mardi Gras in New Orleans. This also is a pagan Jewish holiday. And this year it is said everything got so out of hand that the police just let it go, with naked people squirming in the streets and sexual acts taking place in the middle of the streets and near riot conditions of squirming, writhing masses of people out of control. Is this your idea of Christ? Shame on you. You are hypocrites and liars, and your own will make you pay dearly for these attitudes and misgivings, for they too one day will want to control you. These misfit activities bring the most basic scoundrel attitudes of human species to be your accepted normal fun, holiday spending and acting. All of the reverse attitudes of God's instructions are the accepted new attitudes of modern times, it is said. Fine, then you shall all end up in the dung heap foundation by these Antichrist humanoids without compassion, truth, or souls. Now, nothing has served to create broad-mindedness, a state of mind whose breadth indicates its lack of depth, so much as the ideas of liberalism which the Jews are constantly teaching to Gentiles, and on which they never themselves act. We need a new sort of allegiance to the reality of life, to the facts as they are, which will enable us to stand up under all cajoling to broad-mindedness and assert a new intolerance of everything but truth. The terms narrow and broad, as they are used today, represent lies. The liberal man ought to believe more. He ought to be deep and wide in his beliefs in order to merit that name. But as usual thing, he believes nothing. He's not liberal at all. When you seek belief with a foundation, belief with vitality, you must seek it among men who are sneered at, under this false Jewish promoted notion of liberality as narrow men. Jewish propaganda, in common with the protocols, is against men who have dug down to the rock. They want broad-minded men who can easily be shifted about the surface and thus serve the invisible scheme in a manner desired. This type of men, on their part, never imagined but that their broad-mindedness is a mark of their superiority and independence. Hatton in the kill box. This again reminds me of the presentations regarding last night's escapades in New Orleans. It was said that most of the sexual acts themselves were between homosexual partners or anyone they could grab off the streets. Reminds me of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The word coming forth was, oh boy, this is probably going to set back the slowing of AIDS by about 2 decades. Laughter. Laughter? Are you nuts, people? AIDS will kill you. And guess who foisted off that unto you? Who made it purely and simply okay to be and do anything you choose and anything that feels good? You see what happens in a godless society? You have no respect, no care for life in its most simplistic format, and you go out of your foolish way to destroy all beauty and wonderment from the very act of being alive, that wondrous of gifts from Creator. Shame rests like a black shroud upon you as a species. Now see what follows. Men are born believers, and for a time they may believe in broad-mindedness, and under the terrific social pressure that has been set up in its favor, they will openly espouse it. But it is too shallow to satisfy any growing roots of life. They must believe deeply something. For proof of this, notice the undeniable strength of the negative beliefs which are held by men who fancy that they believe nothing. Therefore, some who are highly endowed with independence of spirit root down into those prohibited matters which at some point touch Jewish concerns. These are the narrow men, but others find it more convenient to cultivate those departments which promise a highway whereon there shall be no clashes of vital opinion, no chance of the charge of intolerance, and in short, they transfer all their contemplative powers to the active life, even as it is written in the protocols. To divert Gentile thought and observations, interest must be deflected to industry and commerce. It is amazing to look around and see the number of men who have been actually browbeaten into committing their whole lives to these secondary or even tertiary things, while they look with great timidity and aversion at the vital things which really rule the world, and upon the issue of which the world really depends. But it is just this deflection to the materialistic base that offers the protocolists and similarly Jewish propagandists their best hold. Broad-mindedness today consists in leaving vital matters severely alone. It descends quickly to material-mindedness, and within this lower sphere all the discord which distresses the world today is to be found. First, there is the ruin of the upper circles of industry and commerce. To make it possible for liberty definitely to disintegrate and ruin Gentile society, industry must be placed on a speculative basis. Now, no one needs to be told what this means. It means, as everything about us shouts, the prostitution of service to profits and the eventual disappearing of the profits. It means that the high art of management degenerates into exploitation, and it means reckless confusion among the managers and dangerous unrest among the workmen. But it means something worse. It means the split up of Gentile society. Not a division, between capital and labor, but division between the Gentiles at both ends of the working scheme. Gentile managers and manufacturers are not the capitalists of the United States. Most of them have to go to the capitalists for the funds with which they work, and the capitalists are Jewish, international. But with Jewish capital at one end of the Gentile working scheme, putting the screws on the manufacturers, and with the Jewish agitators and disruptionists and subversives at the other end of the Gentile working scheme, putting the screws on the workmen, we have a condition at which the world managers of the protocol program must be immensely satisfied. Now we might fear the combined strength of the Gentiles' vision with the blind strength of the masses, but we have taken all measures against such a possible contingency by raising a wall of mutual antagonism between these two forces. Thus, the blind force of the masses remains our support. We, and we alone, shall serve as their leaders. Naturally, we will direct their energy to achieve our end. Protocol 9. The indication that they are highly satisfied is that they are not only not doing anything to relieve the situation, but are apparently willing to have it made worse. And if it be at all possible for them to do so, they would like to see this coming winter and the privations which are scheduled for it, unless Gentile flabbiness before the Jewish power, high and low, receives a new backbone. Hatton in the kill box. And it didn't. Now bring the United States to the verge of, if not across, the very line of Bolshevism. They know the whole method of artificial scarcity and high price it. It was practiced in the French Revolution and in Russia. All the signs of it are in this country too. Hatton in the kill box. And everything in the world as to economic chaos and stress are again even more prevalent than in the 1920s, to be sure, by big bunches. Well, the industrial problems for their mental food and light amusement for their leisure hours, these are the protocol methods with regard to the Gentile mind. And under cover of these, the work is to be done, the work which is best expressed by the motto, divide and rule. To divert over restless people from discussing political questions, we shall now bring forward new problems, apparently connected with them problems of industry. Protocol 13. Has not everyone been struck by the divorcement which exists in this country between the mass thought, which is almost exclusively devoted to industrial questions, and the party thought, which is endeavoring to keep the field of pure politics? And is it not a fact that our friends the Jews are strongly entrenched in both fields, in politics to keep it recreationary and in industrial circles to keep it radical, and so widen the split? And what is this split but a split of the Gentiles? For society is Gentile, and the disruptive influences are Jewish. We have concluded in the Constitution rights for the people that are fictitious and not actual rights. All these so-called rights of the people can only exist in the abstract and can never be realized in practice. The proletarian gains no more from the Constitution than the miserable crumbs thrown from our table in return for his votes to elect our agents and pass our measures. Republican rights are a bitter irony to the poor man, for the pressure of daily labor prevents him from using them, and at the same time deprives him of the guarantee of a permanent and certain livelihood by making him dependent upon strikes, organized either by his employers or his comrades. Protocol 3. Now this remark about strikes is not at all puzzling to anyone who has studied the different types of strikes in this country. The number fomented from above the working class is astoundingly large, will force up wages, which, however, will be of no benefit to the workers, for we will at the same time cause a rise in the prices of necessities, pretending that this is due to the decline of agriculture and of cattle raising. We will also artfully and deeply undermine the sources of production by instilling in the workmen ideas of anarchy. Protocol 6. And this, we will represent ourselves as the saviors of the working class who have come to liberate them from this oppression by suggesting that they join our army of socialists, anarchists, communists, to whom we always extend our help under the guise of the fraternal principles of universal human solidarity. Protocol 3. Now, broad-mindedness again. In this connection, it is always well to remember the words of Sir Eustace Perry, heretofore quoted, words which are sponsored by Jews themselves. Not because the Jews care for the positive side of radical philosophy, not because he desires to be a partaker in Gentile nationalism or Gentile democracy, but because no existing Gentile system of government is ever anything but distasteful to him. Or, as the author of The Conquering Jew says, he is democratic in his sentiments, but not in his nature. And when he proclaims the common brotherhood of man, he is asking that the special gate now closed against him in so many quarters shall be open to him, not because he wants equality, but because he desires to be master in the social world, as he is showing himself in so many other spheres. Many an honorable Jew will, I doubt not, dispute the accuracy of this distinction. But if he does, it will be because he has lived so long in the atmosphere of the West that he is unconscious of what is bred in the bone of his Eastern race. It is not difficult, therefore, to see the genealogy of the Jewish ideas of liberalism, from their origin to their latest effects upon Gentile life. The confusion named for is here. There is not a reader of these lines who has not felt in his own life the burden of it. Bewilderment characterizes the whole mental climate of the people today. They do not know what to believe. First one set of facts is given to them, then another. First one explanation of conditions is given to them, and then another. The fact shortage is acute. There's a whole market full of explanations that explain nothing, but only deepen the confusion. The government itself seems to be hampered, and whenever it starts on a line of investigation, finds itself mysteriously tangled up so that the procedure is difficult. This government aspect is also set forth in the protocols. Now add to this the onslaught of the human tendency toward religion, which is usually the last barrier to fall before violence and robbery unashamed stalk forth. In order to bring the condition about at which this world program aims, the fourth protocol says, it is for this reason that we must undermine the very principles of God and soul and replace these conceptions by mathematical calculations and material desires. And when we deprived the masses of their belief in God, ruling authority was thrown into the gutter where it became public property, and we seized it. Protocol 14. We have taken good care, long ago, to discredit the Gentile clergy. Protocol 17. When we become rulers, we shall regard as undesirable the existence of any religion except our own, proclaiming one God with whom our fate is tied as the chosen people, and by whom our fate has been made one with the fate of the world. Hatton in the kill box. Yes, and that God would be Jehovah, Satan. For this reason, we must destroy all other religions. If thereby should emerge contemporary atheists, then as a transition step, this will not interfere with our aims. Protocol 14. This will probably offer matter for reflection by the broad-minded. It is curious to note how this religious program has worked out in Russia, where Trotsky, as loudly heralded in the American Jewish press, is said to have no religion, and where Jewish commissars tell dying Russians who ask for priests, "We have abolished the Almighty." Miss Catherine Dukuchief is reported under a Philadelphia date to have told the Near East Relief that Russian Christian churches have been subjected to the vilest indignities by the Bolsheviki, details of which she gives, but the synagogues remain untouched, meeting with no damage. All these lines of attack, whose object is the destruction of the natural rallying points of Gentile thought and the substitution of other rallying points of an unwholesome and destructive nature, are assisted, as we saw in the last article, by the propaganda for luxury. Luxury is recognizable as one of the most enervating influences. Its course runs from ease through softness to flabbiness to degeneracy, mental, physical, and moral. Its beginnings are attractive. Its end is lavishness in some form, testifying to the complete breakdown of all the strong fiber of life. It may make a theme for a more complete study someday, and this lure to lavishness, luxury, and the identity of the forces that set the lure. But now to conclude this general view of the method, rather this part of the method, the confusion itself, which of all these influences converge to produce, is expected to produce another more deeply helpless state, and that state is exhaustion. Hatton in the kill box. Dharma claims right now to have reached this state. It needs no imagination to see what this means. Exhaustion is today one of the conditions that menace the people. The recent political conventions and their effect upon the public fully illustrated. The people believe little and expect less. Confidence is gone. Initiative is nearly gone. The failure of movements, falsely heralded as people movements, has gone far to make the people think that no people's movement is possible. So say the protocols. To wear everyone out by dissensions, animosities, feuds, famine, inoculation of diseases, want, until the Gentiles see no other way of escape except an appeal to our money and power. Protocol 10. And we will so wear out and exhaust the Gentiles by all this that they will be compelled to offer us an international authority, which by its position will enable us to absorb without disturbance all the governmental forces of the world and thus form a super government. We must so direct the education of Gentile society that its hands will drop in the weakness of discouragement in the face of any undertaking where initiative is needed. Protocol 5. The Jews have never been nonplussed. This is the true psychic characteristic of those who have a clue to the maze. It is the unknown that exhausts the mind, the constant wandering around among tendencies and influences whose source is not known and whose purpose is not understood. Walking in the dark is wearing work. The Gentiles have been doing it for centuries. The others, having a pretty accurate idea of what it is all about, have not succumbed. Even persecution is endurable if it is understandable, and the Jews of the world have always known just where it fitted in the scheme of things. Gentiles have suffered more than Jewish persecutions than have the Jews, for after the persecutions were over, the Gentile was as much in the dark as ever, whereas Judaism simply took up again its century-long march toward a goal in which it implicitly believes, and which some say who have deep knowledge of Jewish roots in the world, and who too may be touched with exhaustion, they will achieve. However, this may be the revolution which would be necessary to unfasten the international Jewish system from its grip on the world. It would probably have to be just as radical as any attempts the Jews have made to attain that grip. There are those who express serious doubts that the Gentiles are competent to do it at all. Maybe not. Let them at least know who their conquerors are. Issue of August 14, 1920, end of quoting. The next topic is quite amusing in itself. Did the Jews foresee the World War? That may be World War I, of course. Did they foresee it? They made it. They made it, and the wars prior to it, and following it from the national revolutions to other national revolutions. Their money changers, from your hands and pockets to theirs, made it possible and paid for it. And you Gentiles just provided gun fodder and target practice for the enemy you didn't even have in the first place. The effort to dumb down students and society as a whole in the New World areas is so effective that you only have stupid robotic zombies moving about pretending to be alive. You ceased as a society to think many years ago, and you move as a swarm of locusts, devouring every luxury and thing you can get on credit, and act as if there's never to be a time of accounting. Well, the controllers lied to you, and the time of accounting is upon you. I don't think many of you will make it through that accounting. Oh well, Adonai.